Forward thinking.
Start actually having.
Yeah, the one thing we talked about, I think it was last December, we'd have like our first meeting in.
Did-
Oh. Hey, Brad. Oh, nope, back on. Okay. We talked about like the first meeting being in December. It's a little tricky when you hold a quarterly budget committee meeting, say in September, October, and there hasn't been really a ton of activity that's occurred. So there are some challenges to that, nothing really exciting. But if something exciting happened and we need to hold one, I'll reach out to the committee. But we talked about December. Yeah, we're gonna hurl. I don't know if it'll be quarterly, but it'll be throughout the year. We'll look at scheduling meetings.
Do we want exciting budget meetings?
Only if that means there's a lot more revenue to talk about.
Yeah.
That kind of excitement.
Nancy, it was decided last year, December and February. And we'll be doing projections before we get to December, so. Just so you know
I
that.
feel like I gives you a time.
I think there's revenue coming in, like David had mentioned, and I think that, there'll be enough spending going on by the time we get to December. 3 months, they won't have the books usually closed out till right up to there, but we'll be able to do projections probably in October.
Yeah. And we'll find out where property taxes actually settled in sometime in October. We get the tax information from the county, and that's a big bucket of revenue for the general fund. So yeah, some of our big pots of money will be coming in.
I'll make a motion.
Oh, but
never mind.
Dan had
Question. For
Yeah.
all these changes that were done, packet you provided today, I noticed that the contingencies have been all shifted from splitting it out between the 2 years to combine to the second year.
That's the correct way to do it, because when you look at each department now has a 2-year budget, so you weren't really supposed to double up the contingency, and
Okay.
you just put it in the final column, the final year. If you need to dip into contingency, you can. But for example, in the general fund, if we were to dip into that contingency figure, it's not factored in the 5-year forecast, and it will lower that forecast. So
Okay.
as Craig mentioned in the first budget committee meeting, yeah, there's no contingency built into this general fund budget or forecast, just with how tight things are right now.
So I know it might be the right accounting way to do that. Is there a way, this is where a communication director would come in. Is there a way to communicate that in a legal way, but that is clear that we're not doubling the contingency budget? You know what I mean? Like, I know if you read the top of the column, it says that this is for a 2-year thing. I'm just saying, is there an easy way to make the public, if they look at it, or do you just say, if you have questions and concern?
Well, I think it is pretty clear because there's no contingency in the first year and the contingencies in the second year.
No,
I mean, you have that amount of contingency for the 2 years.
Yeah, and
Yeah, but
what we're gonna do for this, the sheets in front of you is what's gonna actually be in the budget book, how the budget's actually getting to look when I bring it in front of city council. And we notate in the budget message right at the very end, any changes that we're gonna have to approve tonight gets notated at the end of the budget message of what the budget committee changed.
okay. Because the way that I would read that, especially because I don't do a budget personally that is 2 years. It is a month or a year, and it is, if I don't have something in there.
So you're
that-
thinking no contingency the first year, but we have a contingency the second year? Is that? how you
Yeah,
would
that's
look
what
at
I'm saying the confusion is, right? Is that, well, why wouldn't you have a contingency the first year?
Well, the way you look at it
So I
is,
understand, I totally
Yeah.
get why, 100%. I'm just saying, does it read that way to a non-accountant? Is my only question. And if it does to the group, although we have a lot of accountants around the table, but, so I don't know. I'm just, again, I'm not gonna, this is not the hill I'm gonna die on. I'm just saying, is there a way to do like an executive overview where it's like, I don't know.
Clear as the water at Fall Creek Reservoir. Crystal clear.
So I chose not to go into accounting and do marketing and communications, and I understand.
Okay, perfect.
So if that helps.
Yeah.
And I could help you communicate that.
I would venture to guess that average citizens would have a lot of questions on reading at the budget overall anyways.
And that's
Just
the,
confusing.
and that's the thing, when you transition to biennium budget, they want you to split everything out, because as a reader, you're looking at prior years thinking, this department only had $1 million budget in prior year, and all of a sudden it went up to $2.5 million.
Yeah.
Well, they have to split it up into separate columns, and then we have the total column. The total column is what city council will be approving.
Mhm.
But just the two separate columns helps readers when they're comparing to the prior fiscal year budgets. It just kind of helps them out a little bit. So.
Okay.
Craig and I talked about this briefly, just for next year, not for this year. We were talking about, I do think at a high level, we could do some education in the budget message around things like how we can't move money from one fund to another, and this fund's for this, just because the perception issues, and I get it, we're building a bridge and laying out people. But it's, it's the quirks of how budgeting law works in the state of Oregon and how capital has to be separate from expense. So I think there's some stuff we could do in the budget message and stuff to help educate up front on that,
Yeah.
but we don't have to change it for this year. Work on it for.
2 years. Yeah.
I
You said next year, I'm like.
I did. We got all that change our thinking.
Really quick, David, Craig, with the changes that you presented today, has that now properly been noticed so it's incorporated into the proposed budget, or do we need to?
You
Make
need,
motion.
you need to approve the proposed changes when we go through the approval process. So then when I bring in front of city council, it'll be all updated.
Yeah. You already got a script to be able to follow to do that.
Got it.
Awesome. Just making sure, I figured we would have going to point to.
But just to verify, I need to make the motion to approve the budget as amended.
As amended, yes.
We first have to amend it.
I think these
Well-
are the
For the
amended
changes.
changes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the question. Do we need to make a motion to amend the budget with these changes and then?
Approve the budget as amended.
And just when we propose this to, just, we're gonna split out, I know this is more cosmetic, but the performance measures, we're gonna split them out in each year versus how we combine them in the current proposed budget.
So I'm gonna make a motion to approve the amended changes to the budget.
Second. All right, all in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, so the budget is,
No, that's,
Amended.
yeah. So then I'm also gonna make a motion to approve the proposed biennial budget for 2025 through 27 for the city of Sherwood as amended, with the tax rate for fiscal year 25-26 of 3.2975 and fiscal year 2026-27 of 3.2975 per 1,000 of assessed value for operating purposes.
second,
Just quick discussion.
yes, quick discussion.
Just for the public, I just want to make sure I understand, that's the current tax rate. It's not changing.
Yes.
What if the tax rate would change? What if?
It can't under state law. Their permanent rate is the permanent rate.
Yep.
Well, the state,
if they
measure
change-
5 and measure 50 would have to be changed.
they change,
Yeah.
then
Well, the voters would have to
The vote-
approve that.
No.
The voters would have to approve
change.
that
It's state law.
statewide first.
It's-
Yes.
It's in the Constitution.
It would change every municipality's tax rate then, so everyone would be going through the process.
But Mayor Rosner's point is a valid one because up until 2 years ago, there were at least one city in Oregon that did not assess their full tax rate that they were legally allowed.
That's right.
Beaverton had some cushion that they didn't use. And the last year they
Used.
used it up, they took the full legal amount. And we've always been at a much lower rate than Beaverton has always been. And we've always been fixed at that level.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make sure that
Keep on
people
going.
didn't assume that we were raising that tax rate.
In theory, we do have the authority to lower it. If for some whatever reason we wanted to assess a lower number, we could. Just a fact.
I just wanted to-
No, that's good conversation. Okay, We have a motion and a second, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, budget and property tax rate are approved. And I guess that's it. So I will adjourn the City of Sherwood budget meeting.
Recess. Play around, run around the block.
Yeah, no. Okay. I will now call to order the City of Sherwood Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee meeting for what's today? June 5th, 2025. David, will you please conduct the roll call?
Chair Strode,
Here.
Vice Chair Kaufman, here. Brian Fairbanks,
Present.
Aaron is absent, Lana Painter,
Present.
Thomas Sherwood is absent, Nancy Taylor, Tim Rosner,
I am here.
Kim Young,
I'm still here.
Renee Browse.
Here.
Taylor Giles,
Here.
Keith Mays,
Yo.
Doug Scott, Dan Stankey.
Here.
Okay, next item is approving budget committee minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the City of Sherwood URA Budget Committee meeting minutes for February 27th, 2025? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Nope, I think we'll have to elect a chair.
What, or
We've never separated it. Are we supposed to?
And we've just it's the same committee that rolls over. I think we've always just used the same one.
All right,
We have to do it next time, or we'll be back.
What has been done the last 19 times?
yeah, you're the expert in the room.
I've done. Here, I do.
how many, out of the 20, how many did you do?
Okay, tonight's meeting will be a working and listening session with presentations. We will have time for general public comment at the beginning of the meeting. If you wish to speak, please fill out a public comment form and give it to the finance director. The committee chair will recognize those persons wishing to speak, and any questions should be addressed through the committee chair. I would like to ask David Bodway, the city's finance director, if we have received any comments.
No, we have not.
Close the public comments. Now we will move on to new business, and I will turn it over to the agency manager, Craig Sheldon.
Before we jump to Craig, did we just, because I might have got mixed up, did we approve the minutes? Formally
Yes.
approve? Oh, we did. Okay, I just want to make sure.
We're very efficient.
All right, just a couple, just a couple highlights in this budget for 25 through 27. There's two funds. There's the General Operating Fund, Administration, Economic Development, and then there's the Capital Project Funds for the construction projects that are ongoing. Operations Fund highlights just include personal services, allocated overhead, materials and services. And then on the Capital Project Fund says for construction of the pedestrian bridge to finish that this next year, start of construction of Ice Age Drive, continue planning and the design work for the tannery site, mass grading and site cleanup. And then I'll turn it over to David. He can talk a little more about this unless you have questions.
Somebody talk about.
Your mic.
Can't hear.
For the viewing public, would somebody talk about what Ice Age Drive is and why it's so important to the economic development going forward in Sherwood?
Want me to start? You got
Too, that's fine.
Please.
If you go toward Tualatin on 12 Sherwood Road, in Oregon Street, a lot of the land, I guess it would be east of there, is what we call our Tonquin employment area. That's been designated by the city of Sherwood, and more importantly, Metro is jobs land, as I like to call it. Some people call it industrial land, but that invokes visions of oil refineries and stuff, and that's not what we're talking about. But a lot of that land is isolated and not available for development because it's not near a road, it's not near sewer and water infrastructure. On 124th, Tualatin Valley Water is putting in a new water treatment plant that's going to service Beaverton and Hillsborough. Not us, we have our own plant. But we're going to connect a road from there through the kind of interior of that Tonquin employment area and out to Oregon Street where some of that new development's happening. So that opens up a lot of land back there for development. So it's about getting it shovel ready, about making it easy for new businesses to choose Sherwood to do business. And and a lot of the efforts we've been doing over the last 5 years in this regard have really been paying off. If you look at Lamb Research coming to the city, NSI, DW Fritz, Olympus Controls, Stetson. All these companies are coming because we've made investments in infrastructure for jobs. And I think it was a big reason Schnitzer decided to build up almost 1 million square feet of tilt-up high-tech manufacturing space on Oregon Street there because they know that road's coming and that opens up. It makes it easier for them to get to I-5. It keeps the trucks off 12 to Sherwood Road. There's just a lot of benefit to getting that work done. Senator Wyden was nice enough to give us a $3 million earmark to help kickstart that from the federal government. And that enabled us to go after I think we got a, correct me if I'm wrong, $17-18 million loan from Business Oregon using that $3 million as seed money to pay for the rest of that. So, and that road will be paid for out of URA and it will be paid for by future SDCs and fees that the developers that come to that area, when they build out, that they'll have to pay. So taxpayers in Sherwood, you won't be paying any more for that road. Did I get it right?
Explanation.
You got it perfect, Mayor. And there's one other thing is, there'll be a couple pieces, chunks of ground that we've had to buy for the road project that the city will be able to sell to have revenue coming in from that the same way to pay for the road. So. For profit.
Question. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to talk about the operations fund first. And really, for the revenue in the operations fund, it's really just tax increment financing. You might think, wow, that's a large jump, David, going from $1.3 million to $2.1 million. I don't know if you remember at a previous budget committee meeting, that's what we adopted, 1.3 million, but it actually come in almost about $1.8 million and had brought a supplemental budget in front of city council earlier, I think it was maybe January, February. And when analyzing the current properties that either have finished out at the Tonquin employment area, there's a few properties that still have not come on online. They're still being assessed off the land value. So we're still expecting to see pretty good growth. I know things have slowed down a little bit, globally with everything that's going on, but over the next couple of years, we expect to see some growth out there. Really, when it looks at personnel services, there's various folks that are heavily involved in whether it's working in the URA, promoting the URA. We have the economic development manager. Some of his time is in there. Of course, we got the agency manager, some of his time, a little bit of my time too. Just working on the audit budget, various reconciliations throughout the year. Materials and services, it has declined a little bit. In fiscal year 25, we did have a Dalkey Lane study or Dalkey study going on. So that's why in prior fiscal year, you saw $187,000, but we're getting back down to normal levels. Debt service is starting to increase a little bit. We did have the interfund loan in there. So we got some, the way I set up that interfund loan is the first 3 years of interest-only payments allow this TIF revenue to build up more. And then some of the principal starts to kick in on some of the loans that we took back or we took out in 2021. So with that, I'm open up for any questions on the operations fund.
It looks like we've done the same thing with the contingency on this that will need to be adjusted.
Yep. I'll get to that when, after I do the presentation, I'll get to the changes that we gotta kind of walk through. Yeah.
Oh, good.
They were in the handout. That's fine.
That was, I had the questions on the changes, so when we get there.
Okay. All right, so the capital fund is the next one we're going to be talking about. There's various pots of revenue in the capital fund. We do have the tannery site cleanup going on. If you can recall, we did receive a $5 million EPA federal grant. So that's kind of how, that's really what that intergovernmental revenue is. And we're still earning pretty good interest on our money there. And when it comes to some of these capital projects, you're going to have personnel expenses because some of city staff, whether it's engineering, public works, you have broadband folks, they're actually building some of this infrastructure. So that's why you'll see personnel services there. And in terms of materials and services in the capital fund, whether it's architectural fees or professional fees for engineers or outside companies that we have to bring in. And for capital outlay, Craig might already mention this, but we're going to be finishing the pedestrian bridge this upcoming fiscal year. There's the tannery site cleanup and there's the build out of Ice Age Drive. Those are kind of the three main projects going on over this next biennium.
So over the, 12 million in capital outlay this year and 9.4 next year, that's basically bridge plus Ice Age. Probably, sure there might be some other things in there, but that's the bulk of it.
That's the bulk of
The
it
rest
because
of the
the
red-
tannery is getting reimbursed. So yeah, I mean, it's down there, but we have the offsetting revenue up top. So yeah.
Okay, great.
I would just add to David's comment. Ice Age Drive is probably a 2-season project that we're just getting started on construction wise. The tannery site, we're still about $2.5 million short, even after the 5 million. And we're actually going to be applying for a watershed grant this next year for about, I don't know exactly the dollar amount yet, but there's supposed to be about $13 million available to help with the restoration part of the project. So which could offset some of the money that we can't spend on that from the 5 million. So just so you know that's where we're kind of at on that. That's what we're still short on. I know we asked the federal government for some money too, back when we went to DC. So
We ask everyone for money.
yeah, so.
And keep asking and get it from somebody eventually.
And that gets us to the point where we can build on that land and it gets us so that land then becomes ours. Cause it's currently a deal with the county, right? And so it just kind of gets us back to, okay, now this land's clean.
So that's, that would be after removing all the material, we're about $2.5 million short, bringing the material back in that we need.
Yeah,
And then it's pretty much shown ready to build on after that.
right. But the $2.5 million does not include a building is what I'm
No,
saying.
no,
Yes. I just want to be really clear.
It gets the ground shovel ready. for-
Right. I just want to be really clear to people, I know we've always said, hey, maybe Public Works will go there. This is just to get us to the ground can now be built on. Okay.
And just to clarify, we own the land. The city owns that land.
I thought, wasn't it a deal or something with the county where they'd give it to us if we cleaned it?
Those, we end up paying some of the back property taxes on that land.
Oh.
And the city owns it. We had to have ownership before we could actually apply for the.
Oh, great. Okay.
And we got it. I mean, I think the property taxes were on one of the parcels. The other, because we're using it for public use, it was virtually nothing to get that land. Yeah.
If there's no further questions, we'll have to walk through some of the changes again that I had to walk through the changes with the city budget. Oh, go ahead, Dan.
Can I ask something? Do you happen to have, with the current payment schedule, what our total interest payments will be for these current loans we have?
Yeah, there's actually
Did I miss that?
in front of your budget packet, page 6 of the
All right.
of the URA budget. So at the very back of your budget book.
And that you're right there.
I was looking at that. Yeah. Okay.
That outlines
Is this not
I guess
principal and
this is
interest?
total payments. I
Yeah.
do have that where I can email it out. It's actually in the audit report too. It splits out interest and debt and principal payments. But yeah, I'd be more than happy to email out.
Okay. I'm curious what.
Yeah.
Those loans we took out, we also took those out when the interest rates were very low.
Yes. Yep. Gone are the days of 2-point-some% interest loans.
So
So
those first two loans are not those are outside loans, right? And the third one at the bottom is the interfund.
Is the interfund loan.
First two ones are the ones that have those like screaming great interest rates.
Yeah, and we took those out in July of 2021. Yeah.
Interfund loan. And as a reminder for those listening, we did the interfund loan with the water fund because if interest rates with the banks had gone up so high, it made more sense to pay ourselves interest.
Yeah.
So the interest will benefit the water fund instead of a bank. Yep.
Yep. And the savings of having to go to an outside organization to where underwriting fees and all the legal fees, yeah, you can spend $300,000-$400,000 pretty easy on closing costs.
What you did was okay by the state government.
Oh, yeah.
Right, okay.
You can take out a loan, you can do loans, but you have to pay it back with interest, in this case, in 10 years.
Yeah.
And the state even has rules, we can't like charge ourselves 0.01% interest. It has to be a real market rate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we took the local government investment pool rate at what that rate was at the time I brought it in front of city council. Yeah.
Just to put another plug in, stuff like this, that's just a little more complicated. That's a really great reason to have someone who's thinking about how to message complicated things that the city does and make sure that that is properly communicated and understood.
Yeah, misinformation gets out sometime.
Yeah.
Having a way to counter it with somebody who has effective
Big sign.
experience and training and clear communication.
And I know finance will benefit from this position because I'll be honest, sometimes that's the last thing on my mind is focusing on communicating when I'm trying to get those
Sound
numbers, getting those numbers set. Yeah. Okay, so really quick, the 2021 URA budget changes. Again, this will be up on the website after this meeting. The changes will be done before I bring this in front of the URA board. But I just want to kind of walk through, since we had already released the budget to the public. I just want to kind of walk through the changes, going to make the changes to the actual budget document. Again, it's just changing that beginning fund balance and the bottom portion for contingency and reserve for future years. And again, on the capital fund, it's really just beginning fund balance and reserve for future years, because in capital funds, you can't budget for contingency because local budget losses. You should know what you're gonna be building and spending on large capital projects. So budget law prohibits us from budgeting contingency in capital funds.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I answered my own question
Thank
by
you. Oh,
looking at it closer.
We budget something. I know like when we said, okay, here's what we're paying for the bridge, but then there's a contingency of this amount.
Per project.
That's in the contract, built into the contract, just in case there's overages. But this is more of,
Okay.
let's just say we decide, oh, we want to do this project right now and it's not budgeted. Well, we're gonna have to wait till the next biennium to do that because I can't build any flexibility, any contingency. I mean, they're pretty stringent on, you should have your capital projects planned.
So you can have project specific contingency inside the project, but not an additional contingency.
Actually, in the actual budget, yeah, and we're talking
Yeah.
two different things a little bit.
And if there was a project and we had the money, you could bring in an amendment, right? Or an amended.
If we had additional money come in, yeah.
Yeah.
Because right now, really, I can't really get into the reserve for future years. Yeah. Yeah, and you can always swap out projects, say, well, we had budgeted this $5 million project and no longer we're gonna put that on the shelf. We'd rather do this $5 million project. It's all under the same bucket in capital outlay. So
So a couple questions kind of along the same lines. I'm seeing that we have the tax revenue. I assume this is the TIF coming into the operations fund.
yes,
That's like growing 2.5, and then presumably continues to grow every year. But most of that money we assume eventually would want to use for capital projects. Can it be moved from operations to capital? Sure.
yes, and if you recall from the supplemental budget I brought in January, February, because the tax revenue came in, I think there was like 51% growth in that URA.
Yeah.
Which blew away my expectations. With that supplemental budget, then I transferred that additional money over to the capital
Yeah.
side. So
So
just-
anytime once that builds up in operations and we're covering our costs and our debt service, we can plunk it over into capital and so we
And
buff
if-
our capital.
Exactly. And
capacity.
if we had a large bucket here, I would have budgeted that transfer out just to move
Got
it
it.
all, as much
Yeah.
money over that capital side as possible.
Okay, so next question then, and then we're, the intergovernmental revenue, and I'm sure you already answered this in the capital plan then, is that $5 million grant, 1.5, 3.5?
Correct. From the federal government,
Okay.
yes.
So then, obviously, again, this goes beyond the scope of this budget, but based on kind of what you know, best guess, when do we anticipate having enough capital built up to do whatever the next project on our list is? And I don't even know what that is, and we don't really care for this purpose, but when, like, will we have money to do something in the next biennial budget? Do you think we'll have it
I
built up
believe
by
we
then?
will, because I believe, I don't know, Eric, if you want to talk a little bit about, can you talk at all about any of the activity going on at the TEA, the Tonquin employment area over there?
Yeah, I mean, it's strong, like I mentioned.
Come on up, Eric.
Mike.
Sorry to
No.
put you on the spot.
Yeah, growth in Tonkin employment area is very strong. We just issued permits for phases 2 and 3. Ice Age Drive, as we mentioned earlier, key project. I fully suspect that once Ice Age Drive goes in, there will be speculative development in that central area. And you know, those aren't the only properties in the TEA. There are other properties along Highway 99. Without getting into the details, we just we're very close to approving a nice office building off Highway 99. That's in the
You are-
urban,
TEA.
I'm sorry, in the URA. Thank
Okay.
you. Off Highway 99, nice office building. So not just the TEA, there are other properties. And, you know, when we set up the URA, we looked at where growth was anticipated, frankly, and brought those properties in.
So yeah, I would say the next biennium, if we're not there, we're pretty close to other projects starting other projects. You know, we still have to analyze the global economy, how things are going here in the States, because you want to be mindful of the interest rates you're going to pay on a future loan. I mean, there's always refinancing you can do, but yeah, I can.
Do we at some point, the URA board, have the consultant come back in and look at that and give us a future estimate since it has been doing better than the original? Like, would we look at that over time or?
We did have them relook at it. I think it was in October he might have came, Elaine and the gentleman might have came and spoke to us, but
Yeah,
once the property tax rolls come in again, if they, again, blow away my expectations, then might be something we could look at, because they can update it at any point in time. It's not
And
expensive.
maybe we should have sometime this year, like a relook at our project list. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a good
see
idea.
what the
Cause
order.
we need to start, even though we may not be starting them for a couple of years, we need to start planning and we'll look at
It's
what
been a while since we talked through
preliminary
that.
engineering
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
And we've hit the top couple big ones that were on the list and I don't even remember what's next. So I'd
No.
love to have a conversation on it. Yeah.
I would add too that, you know, when we originally designed the URA, a lot of you know this, we designed it with 3 feet of right-of-way spider web through the entire city. And that paid for a good chunk of our fiber to home project for the broadband stuff. Once that's installed and once we pay for that, we can redraw that map.
Yep.
You know, so with the consultants, we can take that land back and then look at other areas that have the potential for high growth and redraw those lines.
Then would that boost the general fund at all? Cause the revenue, the incremental revenue for that spider web would now be back,
It's so.
or it's so minimal that,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. I knew it was small. I just didn't know if like no, I get that.
But you know, way down the road, that is something you could do as you're winding it out.
Yeah, for sure. You can get the money back in the general fund sooner than the end of the URA. Like the bridge here, you know.
Any other questions?
No.
I'll turn it back over to the chair. We first have to approve the amendments again.
I'll make a motion to approve the amendments as presented.
Second? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, amendments, for the budget are approved. Now can I get a motion for passing the budget?
I will make a motion to approve the proposed biennial budget for 2025-27 for the city of Sherwood, 2021 URA budget as amended, and raise the maximum amount of revenue that may be raised by dividing the taxes under section 1C, Article 9 of the Oregon Constitution and ORS Chapter 457 for fiscal year 2025 and 26 and fiscal year 26, 27.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes. And with that, meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, Budget
Good job,
Committee.
everybody.